What if I told you that there's a new Catholic series that brings the faith, courage, and drama of the Crusades to the big screen like never before? I'm talking about Knights of the Cross, an epic, action-packed, faith-filled series diving deep into the story of Richard the Lionheart and all about the Third Crusade. In our latest episode of The Catholic Couple, I sat down with Austin Kelly, the CEO and director behind this incredible two-part series from ChristianChannel.com, to talk about the vision, the heart, and the spiritual mission behind this wonderful series. This isn't just another historical drama. It's a Catholic story told through the cinematic lens where faith meets battle and heroism meets holiness. We talk about what it really means to fight for Christ in a world at war. We talked about how the series captures both the physical and the spiritual battles of the Crusade, and how storytelling like this can help reignite the Catholic imagination of our modern culture. If you love history, faith, and epic storytelling, you're not going to want to miss this one. So grab your sword, or at least your coffee, and get ready for this conversation that's going to inspire you to live your faith with the same courage as the saints and soldiers who went before us. So with no further ado, here's our new episode. All right, welcome to another episode of The Catholic Couple, having fun with faith, family, and friends. I am your solo host tonight, Bobby Fredericksen. Katie is off tonight, but I am joined tonight with Austin Kelly. He is the founder and producer of this great Catholic Christian channel on YouTube, but he's got this great show called Knights of the Cross. I was fortunate to watch the very first episode, so we're going to unpack everything about that, what's going in, his journey of how he went from being in LA and how he kind of was led into the church to do this kind of ministry work, which is obviously a lot different than Hollywood type stuff. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining our audience.
Hey, really happy to be here.
So first and foremost, you want to give us, I listened to a couple of your interviews where you kind of talked about how you kind of stumbled into this field.
My background's in marketing. So I've been in marketing for around 10 years, working with celebrities, usually building up products, putting them in Target, putting them at Walmart. And, my faith wasn't, I was kind of your, I guess, typical Sunday Catholic, right? Sinning 7 days a week, still receiving communion. I just didn't know my faith. And actually what happened was I had a turning point in my life when I grew up in Los Angeles, and what had happened was our cathedral was on fire. The San Gabriel mission was on fire. And out of those ashes in that, I really reflected on and asked God, like, hey, use me, use my talents to serve you instead of these celebrities. And I don't want to name the celebrities' names, but there's still, some of them are still there at Walmart and Target. And I'm the guy building up the brands, usually building up the websites and driving all that traffic. Well, I just wanted to use that talent and point people to Jesus, because I didn't know my faith. And I'm certain there's some Catholics out there that didn't know the history about the Crusades. But my background was, they didn't have a word for it back then, but now it's very popular. We have a saint that kind of has coined it, right? Influencer marketing. Influencer marketing was very new in 2016, 2017. And I knew that I'm not famous. I'm not really friends with Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt, but I knew that in order for this movement to happen, the Christian channel to happen, I had to work and collaborate with influencers in the Catholic space. And back then that was kind of new. So we kind of took a little bit from The Chosen. I reached out to J. Stephen Roberts and I said, hey, I have this idea. Let's make a Crusader show. J. Stephen Roberts is like the one of the top Crusader history channels on YouTube, has a really large audience. And we ended up crowdfunding the project. The good news is we crowdfunded episode 1, which is the episode you watched. And then now we're about to release episode 2 this December 2028 on the ChristianChannel.com. And there's still opportunity to crowdfund. Our crowdfund ends November 15th. So any of your audience members that want to get their name featured on the ending credits, they could do that on the ChristianChannel.com, click on crowdfund, and for like $149, you get your name on the ending credits.
Oh, that's so cool. And, as I was praying before the show, is that we hear a lot of Christians and Catholics say, we need more stuff for our kids to watch. We need more content that's faith friendly, that's talking about Jesus. But when it comes time to actually put our money where our mouth is, or put our butts in the seats, or share a post or like something where it doesn't cost you anything, that we sometimes drop the ball when it comes to that. I recently worked with Anthony D'Ambrosio, who did the Triumph of the Heart, and I went with them to Poland. And that's what I kept on this whole trip. It's like, well, we want to see these great films. We want the talent to go to these faith-based films that are not cheesy, that are nice, high quality, with the good cameras and the cinematography and the storylines and all the things that we've grown accustomed to in the secular culture. And we want that to be, in the faith space. So it's like, well, how do we get that? Well, we have to support the people who are doing that, whether that's with our butts and seats, with financially backing, and obviously, like I said, sharing and doing all those kinds of things. So for you, what was the driver to, hey, we need to do a Christian channel and go call it Christian? And, because, we hear that a lot of Catholics are, you're not even Christian, kind of a thing. We're like, no, we definitely are. So how did that go about? Like, hey, this is the avenue, this is the medium of how I want to do it, and try to take my skills, my talents to that realm.
Yeah, great question. So Christian Channel happened basically because that the church caught on fire, and also I was in marketing. I was grinding. I was working like 12-hour days. So I come home from work and I turn on the TV and I see shows that are like called Lucifer. I see other shows called like about three witches. It's like as if Hollywood was bombarding us with satanic content. I said, why can't I just binge the Bible? Why can't I just watch the lives of the saints? This doesn't exist. At the time, it didn't exist. And there was other alternatives. There was your, cheesy Christian rom-coms where I could subscribe to more thousands of cheesy Christian rom-coms. I think right now is the catalyst, is the momentum that we're building in Christian cinema, right? We have great directors that has proof in the pudding. Yes, you're right. We need thousands and hundreds of thousands of audiences to support content that goes to the arts. Like Anthony's a great example. I really admire him for what he's done in such a quick turnaround time. I had no idea you were involved with the project. But yeah, it's you're right. Christian Channel happened because this didn't exist. And, streaming is very expensive. A lot of people didn't know that. So what had happened was I reached out to Warner Brothers. I reached out to a lot of distributors, and you would be surprised. They loved us. They were saying, wow, this is amazing. There's a Christian streaming network. We have a vault of great content called Songs of Bernadette, and a list of other. Warner Brothers has it in the basement. And it's very frustrating because there are Catholic studios out there, and you would think, well, why aren't they streaming these great movies? And they're not even that expensive. So when you get into the nitty gritty of it, yes, I agree with you, Bobby. We definitely need a Christian channel, which is the whole point of the streaming network, is for families to safely watch content and not second guess. I have a son too at home, and I'm always worried, oh man, what's the ad going to be, right? So the good news is, we've been at this for about 5 years. The technology is evolving and it's getting so good. We're going to be able to filter out content. What I mean, filter out content, filter out the ads that we don't approve of. So I'm really optimistic about the future of Catholic and Christian cinema. I think this is a great era to live in for independent cinema and independent Catholic filmmakers, because it takes an army. No, actually, it doesn't take an army. It literally just takes like maybe 1,000 people to chip in $500 to $1,000. Boom, you got $1 million budget. Next thing you know, you're making Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Yeah, and that's the way that the multiplication worked all throughout Scripture. It started with Andrew, and then he got Peter, and then you got the inner circle, and then it's the 12, then it's the 72, and then it's that multiplication of telling other people like, hey, check this thing out. And a lot of times even if you can't give financially, you can support obviously through prayer, but getting and sharing the programs that are out there to let people know, to get that brand awareness, to have some influence. I recently wrote an article entitled Influencers versus Saints. And as I've grown more in, being more popular on Instagram and things like that, it's that juxtaposition of being out front and trying to be an influencer, which I always get kind of cringy about because it's kind of weird. I see myself as a podcaster and like a digital creator and a digital missionary, really. But that's, Carlo Acutis is, God's influencer, stuff like that. But for me, it's like, it's that balance that we have to be, 1 foot in being out front, but also being humble. We have to be out there, but if we're not going to put it out there, no one's going to do it for us. And like you said, Netflix and Disney, it's like, it's very hard to, to even let our kids free roll on Disney. It's like, it used to be a family Christian movies all had those themes in it. Now it's like, they can't watch anything after, 2012, basically. It's like, we let them watch all the older stuff, but they can't watch any of the new shows before, we watch them and know what's going on. And that's just, that's the mild stuff. But Netflix and, like you said, Lucifer, every other show is something about Satan or trans or you name it. It's like, vampire, it's like the most grotesque stuff. So it's good to see that there is an explosion of people who, and we're starting to see the studios see that, okay, well, there is money to be made. There is a yearning. There is still a Christian culture here in America that is yearning and longing for content that's wholesome, that has stories of the Bible, that are of the saints, where we can learn from and be inspired by. And people love those kinds of stories. And there are no better stories, obviously, than the gospel, the greatest story ever told, and the stories of the saints.
1,000%. I 1,000% agree with you. And, we all need to be supporting each other, going on people's podcasts, bringing brand awareness, because your audience is probably going to really enjoy Knights of the Cross. They're going to really enjoy watching what's the one thing people say about being Christian? Oh, the Crusades are bad. You guys are terrible.
Yeah.
That's the one thing where this is kind of why we created the show, to pivot back to like, no, it was out of defense, right? Yeah. Not everybody was out for gold and, plunder. Yeah, there were sinners, but the point of the show is a lot of why we picked the Third Crusade was because J. Stephen Roberts, our co-writer, truly wanted to make this an epic film. And he insisted, he said, Austin, I am not doing this unless we do the Battle of Jaffa. And I didn't know anything. One, I wasn't really catechized in my faith. And two, I knew nothing about the Crusades. I thought I just leveraged my influencer marketing. It's like, hey, I worked with this celebrity. Let's make it happen. By the graces of God, we've got this far. We finished the project. But to point it back to the Crusades, the whole point of the show, if you watched episode 1, they're outnumbered. They're a lot of their men died when they landed. Their king, true story, King Richard the Lionheart during the Third Crusade, fell feverish. Like they thought, dude, this guy's going to die. We just got here and we're just battling the greatest Muslim warrior of all time, Saladin. So we were so underprepared, but what gave him strength? If you watch episode 1, what was the one thing that gave him strength? It
was his faith. And that scene with the purgatory, I think that was excellent. How you portrayed that when he was, spoilers, that he was under this, this fever, he was in and out of consciousness, and there he sees his father who didn't live the life that he thought he should, and there he was being, not in a great place. We know purgatory, there has to be purging going on there. And I thought that was a great job of how did that conception come about that we need to do this most realistic version of what purgatory would look like?
It was because our director, so I directed episode 2, but our director, Aaron, in episode 1, he's not Catholic at all, but he just fell in love with the Catholic faith. And a lot of people, there was more miracles that happened behind the scenes that actually were in actual cinema, but he just fell in love with the Catholic faith. He fell in love with purgatory. He thought it was so beautiful and so cool. And he was not really a spiritual guy, but we filmed this in Utah during the middle of the pandemic because we couldn't really film the episodes here in California. And a lot of our staff members were Mormon. So it was really interesting sitting in a production meeting at a movie studio, at a production studio, one of the largest ones in Utah, and explaining to the Mormons about the Eucharist, and they were so completely in awe. And I was like, wow, what impact is this show going to do? And I'm going to fast forward to more spiritual stuff, but we ended the answer to your question. You're absolutely right about purgatory. I have never seen purgatory done cinematically before. So the advice that we got was from a Latin Mass priest over in Utah, Father Gray, who you've seen on EWTN a few times. He was actually on the movie set with us. He was the actor, the Latin Mass priest in the show. So we were luckily enough, we were as authentic as we could be. And so we took that feverish dream that Richard the Lionheart had, and we took advantage of it with creative freedom. And what gave Richard the Lionheart life was the Eucharist. The Latin Mass priest gives him the Eucharist, And then he gives them the cross of Christ, which is, we all bear this cross, right? So as fathers, we have the mortgage, we have rent, we have life, right? Our kids would never appreciate type of moment. But those are the basic crosses. But the crosses that Richard had was the crusade. So he took on the cape of the crusade, and he took the Eucharist, and then he took the blood, and then he levitated up. And he levitated up life, message, life, God, life, and became animated and say, everything we're doing is right. I saw my Father in purgatory. I'm doing God's will. And it is, I think the whole point of the show, Bobby, is how do we imitate Christ in the moment of despair, chaos, and just death and destruction, right? And that was the whole point. And that's, what I love about this show, it's being released. Yeah, I know we're crowdfunding it, but it is being released on thechristianchannel.com, December 28th. So if you're with your family, maybe you have an atheist cousin or a brother or sister who fell away from the faith, or, you guys get in, political arguments and religious arguments, why don't you watch Knights of the Cross and say, hey, there's this cool Catholic TV show. It's a mini series, 2 episodes, but let's watch it as a family. I think it's going to do more impact. And I have a true story. I have an aunt who fell away from the faith, and she grew up Catholic. She didn't even know what purgatory looked like. She thought it was, some make-believe magic, right? And it really made her ponder and question about her faith. And that's the power of cinema. That's the power of
great stories telling.
Great storytelling, but I'm a visual person. A lot of people are visual people. We need to see it. We need to see the lives of the saints. It's great to have a great podcast to talk about the lives of saints. I mean, Mike Schmitz does the best job of doing it. But as a person that is like myself, who's a visual person, I need to see, how do we imitate Christ? And you see that well with Richard.
Yeah, and you've seen the most popular example is obviously Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. It's like we never could imagine really how bad it was. And sometimes you need that visual thing to say you might not have to watch it again because that'll be scarred into your mind. And we could be inspired and to see hey, I need the mercy, what he did and what it cost him. And that goes the same for the Crusades. If, if they didn't fight back the Muslims, people don't understand, my background's, I was a history teacher. So, I mean, the Muslims made it all the way up into, Spain, into France, into trying to take over Rome with the Battle of Lepanto, to Austria. This was a defensive war, and we get a bad rap that the Christians and the Crusades, and a lot of people that have never even took the time to even understand what they're talking about. They don't even know anything about how they just really ravaged, from, the early 600s all the way up. They weren't expelled from Spain until 1492. And there was the last battle was in 1683 in Vienna, where King Sobieski came down and helped fight the rest of the Turks to get the Ottomans out of there, because they had to fight back. This was a defensive war. Yeah, like you said, there are sinners and there's things that go bad, but we definitely need to reclaim the story. And we do see a resurgence of men wanting to come to the faith, and we shouldn't hide from these things that are attractive to men. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt that says "Terror of Demons." I'm tired of Saint Joseph with the tulips. I want the terror of demons, the one who's protecting the family and doing all that he could. It was a tough guy, and the stories of the Knights Templar and the Crusades and Richard Lionheart and all these stories. There's a reason why men and boys love these stories like Gladiator and Spartacus, or any of these, The Patriot, that Braveheart, these stories, because that calls something out of us that's missing in the Catholic faith. And John Eldridge wrote this great book called Wild at Heart about men. There's 3 things that every man is longing for. It's an adventure to go on, a battle to win, and a beauty to win. And those are the things that the church has done a horrible job in the last 50 years of selling to men, of the adventure of our Catholic faith and what it means to follow Jesus and to have that life and to be fully alive in our faith and what that can look like. It's an adventure unlike anyone. I'm living proof to it. I never would have thought as a convert, 17 years ago, became Catholic, and what I'm doing now and doing 2 podcasts and doing all this crazy Catholic stuff. I'm like, what? But I wouldn't change it because the adventure has been so awesome. And, we have those battles to fight. We don't have to go on a crusade to Jerusalem, but our battles are, protecting our families from, enemies within, without, the spiritual battles, the battle on our knees, the, like you said, the mortgage, the, all those kinds of things. And our wives, I thought when I got married, I won the beauty, but no, you have to win her back. You have to win her every single day. So it's one of those things that we need to have those things front and center. And these stories, the Knights of the Cross, helps inspire men to like be masculine. It's okay. Just because, I heard the line, just because you're saved doesn't mean you have to be soft. You don't have to check your testicles at the door to be a Catholic man. It's like, no, we should embrace what that looks like. Jesus was both lion and lamb. And too much of what it was presented to in the church is Jesus with the lamb on his shoulder, and he's real nice, and he loves everybody. He's like Jesus hippie, versus no, he's the second person of the Trinity. He was the same person flipping tables and calling out people to their face when he had to, but also being able to love well. And I think movies and series like this can really help, inspire men to be men. Like, what does it look like? What does dying for your faith look like? Not in a battle, but in your own life and your faith journey.
Yeah, and that's exactly 100% what you just said, Bobby. But that's why episode 2 that we filmed, that's going to come out December 28th. It's a lot of secular people that are not Catholic have watched the show, and the feedback that I got from them, that this show reminds them of Star Wars, because you have a blend of the battles, you have a blend of the spirituality, and then also, yeah, and
That's good.
oh yeah. And what I like about episode 2, I directed episode 2. It is very cinematic, and it's called the Battle of Jaffa, and it actually is a true battle that Richard the Lionheart had done. I'm not too far away from Camp Pendleton, where the Marines are, and it's a very famous Marine battle. As a historian, you probably know more than myself, but it's where Richard the Lionheart, he had a decision where he was about to go back to England. Right. And, the Crusades were not perfect. Just because we're Catholic, there was a lot of betrayal in the Crusades. The French really did them dirty. That's kind of to sum it up. But what ended up happening was he was on his way back home. He's like, hey, I got this ruthless brother of mine, John. That's where you get the Robin Hood story, by the way. I have this ruthless brother of mine. I got to go back. Dude, the guy had it tough. Okay. He had family problems, and his Catholic friends were betraying him. Sound familiar? Judas. Okay. So what had happened was he had to make a decision, and he actually took a small group of men on the boats on the coast of the Battle of Jaffa. And, we displayed that battle here in Malibu, California, just before the fire, actually a few months before the fires. And we filmed that epic battle. And what I like about our show is we filmed the show early on with like plastic and, kind of plastic swords. And can I tell you what it looked like on camera, Bobby?
Yeah.
It looked like plastic. It didn't look real. So we ended up using the real deal. We had real chainmail, real equipment. And, by the graces of God, nobody died on set. But there was blood. I mean, there was actual, the helmet's really rough. So it was real metal. So we had a really great time on the movie set, and we're really excited to display that Christian action that I've never seen on camera, outside of Gladiator. But my goal for the show, if you are Catholic, and don't wait for the big streamers, if you could do us a big favor and subscribe to thechristianchannel.com this Christmas, or if you want to participate and you want to get your name featured on the ending credits, all you have to go to christianchannel.com, click on crowdfund, and get your name featured on the ending credits. And that's a good way to open the door to friends and family and say, hey, look what I supported. I supported this new Christian project, and I really let's sit down and watch it. It's not that long of an episode. Each episode's like 23 minutes long, and it's a great conversation starter. But here's the one, not criticism, but here's the one take I've gotten from most Catholics that have watched the show. And that is, we want more. Even Catholic movie studios, I'm not going to say which ones, but there's a few of them out there, have demanded, we want more. I'm like, well, these productions cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we need a crusade of Catholics like yourself to say, hey, we need to support this guy. Let's throw down some money. Like I said, if we had 1,000 people donate $1,000, we would have $1 million budget. I'd probably hire, Anthony to come with me to film a couple episodes, because it's a lot of work. So that's the kind of momentum we need. That I think we need to focus not on ourselves, Bobby, but we need to focus on Christ and say, this is for him, right? If this show is working, why don't we invest more into these projects? So what I'm excited about, this is brand new. This project took 5 years to make. This was an independent project, but we did our best to make it cinematic.
What are some of the other projects that you've done before this? I know there's some other things on there. Obviously, we didn't talk about that, but I'm sure. And what other things do you have in the pipeline that people can look forward to?
Yeah, very, very good timing. I can't say what we're up to next, but there is somebody in the Rogan sphere that we're talking to about making a project with. And also season 2 for Knights of the Cross has been, there's a show out on Daily Wire coming out next year called Pendragon. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to say who, but one of the lead actors so don't think we're sitting idle. There is momentum brewing. So in the event that this show does pick up and it's streaming really well on Peacock and Hulu, and there's a studio willing, by the way, they want to back it, studios that see momentum, see the analytics, season 2 of Knights of the Cross will be about the King of France. And we're thinking about title with King Louis. And we're thinking about title The Crusader King of France. And one of the main actors is on this show called Pendragon, and he's just ecstatic about joining Knights of the Cross. So there is this masculine attraction with masculine men who want to do cool things. And one more thing, there's another famous actor that works with Leonardo DiCaprio that wants to be a part of this project. So in Hollywood, people know about us, but the reality is we're super independent, super independent. On the mercy, I feel like St. Francis knocking on doors in every single podcast because I'm at the mercy of the funding that we get. And to be honest, we did the best we can with less than six figures. So it's by the grace of God, we've made it this far. I'm able to show the world, hey, this is what we've been doing. But my background is in marketing. I only come from making commercials. This is the first real big project that we produced. And it's really, I'm really blessed that be on your podcast. I'm really blessed that, some of these actors want to be a part of this project. So it's all from the graces of God. If God wills it, we'll make season 2. If things don't pan out, I'll move on to my next project.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, hey, we got to trust, and all those who are watching and listening, if you feel moved, go help get this done. The first episode was excellent. I can't wait to see the second one. I want to see more of this content. Like I said, a combination of history and our faith, but it's also woven in, like you said, it's not just all action. What separates a Catholic show is the spirituality that goes behind it. We know that there are those realities in the spiritual world, that there's so much more going on. Like we know at Mass, like that beautiful What Happens at Mass movie, that short where it shows you what's actually going on with all the angels and Jesus and the blood. That's what's really going on. And when a show can tap into that and to try to lean on, that scene with the Eucharist and the Mass and bringing that and making that the most important thing, that's what I want to see more of. And I want to be able to help reach other men who feel this call for themselves to want to go on adventure, and to live their life, to the full, like Jesus says. I want you to have a life abundantly. And what does that look like for us being authentically, men? And sometimes it's a battle, sometimes it's an adventure, and most of the times it's just getting up and living a heroic life, whether that's a father, a husband, or whoever may be listening. So we do appreciate you, Austin, taking the time. Once again, how can they reach you? What's the best way, website, and how can they donate again?
Thanks. All you have to do is go to christianchannel.com, click on crowdfund, and that will link to our donor box, donorbox.org/Knights. And the good news is our goal is $50,000, and right now, as we speak, we've raised over $42,000. So by the graces of God, this show's coming out. Okay. Awesome. So we're super excited about that. And our stretch goal is the red carpet. So if we reach $100,000, we'll have a red carpet here in Newport Beach. And we're really in that perk is already on there. So we're just super excited that the show's coming out and that the major streaming services are super excited about it. And a lot of big actors are excited about it. But I want your fans to know that this show is coming out December 28th on christianchannel.com. And if you want to watch it, you could subscribe to the Christian channel. I think it's $4 a month, $4.09. Or when you crowdfund, you could watch it. So it's a great way to participate. And I'm just super excited to be on this podcast to share that with your audience.
No, I appreciate you taking the time and sharing. Like I said, I watched the first episode. It's excellent. So wishing you nothing but the best. You'll be in our prayers, and all who are watching and listening, get to christianchannel.com and check it out.